Alrighty, it's Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Here we are on the Influencers Podcast. No, we never sleep. We never take off. We always work. This is the good day. Most people are on the road traveling right now, and I'm sitting at home enjoying fine weather here in Atlanta, Georgia. But I want to introduce to you today Avery Michaelson. He's our guest today on the Influencer Podcast. He's the founder, the CEO of Longitude Exchange. He's from New York. At least that's where he lives right now. But I hear you're not in New York. Tell us, what part of the world are you in right now, Avery?
Yeah, that's correct, Dr. Bill. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Hi to everyone on the Influencers Podcast. Pleasure to be with you. I'm actually calling today from Cape Town, South Africa. So on quite the other side of the world from you in Atlanta, Georgia. And certainly my mind is with all my friends and family back in the United States as they head into this Thanksgiving weekend.
It's a turkey weekend, and it's always my favorite weekend of the year because it's the Iron Bowl. I happen to go to Auburn. We play Alabama. There's nothing bigger than the Iron Bowl down south.
I know it. As someone who's grew up in North Carolina and lived in Florida for quite a while, I know the importance of college football.
Absolutely. Well, look, you're a world traveler. You've been involved in some fun things. I wanted to get my audience. We're in 190 countries. Millions of people have access to this particular podcast, and we routinely have thousands watch it. So your audience is going to want to find out, what is Longitude Exchange and what do you do? So let me let you give your story.
Sure. Well, Longitude Exchange is a marketplace for trading in longevity and mortality risk. Now, I'll try to make this concept that's somewhat complex as simple and easy as possible. Longevity risk is the risk of population living longer than expected. It's a really good thing for all of us as humanity, but it presents challenges for pension funds and insurance companies that are tasked with paying pension and annuity liabilities to folks in retirement. So longevity risk is a really big issue for really the planet as populations are aging and a whole generation of people are entering retirement. How are we going to provide for retirement income in a secure and sustainable way for generations to come? And one of the challenges in that is longevity risk. And our platform, Longitude Exchange, is helping those companies to manage that risk. So it's, I believe, an important challenge that we're actually working on.
Yeah, I don't think many people have interviewed with us that talked about longevity risk, and it's a unique topic. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because you speak to something that's very important in our business, medical business. Malpractice was something we had to have. And I always knew that there was a thing called reinsurance, where you would insure against loss from malpractice policies, and people could actually mitigate risk in different ways. Is that analogous to what you're talking about with longevity risk?
You've hit the nail on the head. We're precisely engaged in that reinsurance market, and many people may not have even heard the term reinsurance. To make it very simple, reinsurance is insurance for insurance companies. As individuals, we take out insurance policies because we have risk. And so we want to pass that risk on to an insurance company with that insurance policy. Insurance companies naturally have a lot of risk. They've accumulated that risk from thousands, millions perhaps of policyholders. And so they seek to mitigate their risks by passing them on to reinsurance companies, which is another form of insurance. Now, where Longitude Exchange comes in is we've developed a methodology for passing that risk as well to capital markets investors. So that is a fancy term for just any institutional investor, not mom and pop retail investors, but other institutions, hedge funds, asset managers, sovereign wealth funds, foundations, endowments, who are able to participate directly in this risk and in taking on some of that risk, as an insurance or a reinsurance company would, using some financial structuring contracts that we developed in my days in banking and now continue to specialize in at our company at Longitude Exchange.
So there's always a profit to be made. If you're going to be involved in mitigation, you're doing something at a profit. And so you're basically spreading the risk, but you're also putting another middleman in the piece of the pie that eventually gets to some total create the cost of the service.
Right. Well, I think you bring up a really good point. For one party to take on this risk, they are paid a premium, just like an insurance company is when you take out a life insurance policy or a homeowner's insurance policy. That company does expect to make a profit, and so the holders of this risk who are seeking protection pay that premium to reduce the risk that they're holding on their books, and actually as well to reduce the amount of capital that they need to hold, because they're replacing that capital with some third party by passing on that risk. Now, the important thing for the financial system, or why I think this is net a very beneficial thing to exist, is we need to distribute the risk around the system such that we don't enter into a too big to fail type of scenario, right? Where we have currently millions and millions of pensioners whose liabilities are being managed by corporate pensions, who is how that liability came about, how their retirement that they're planning on being paid out. Those corporate pension plans are in the process of transferring those liabilities into the insurance sector using transactions called pension buyouts. And that's bringing a lot of risk towards the insurance sector. What we need to do is develop methods and systems for that risk to be spread again around a broad pool of capital markets investors, insurance companies, reinsurance companies, so we don't see that risk too narrowly concentrated, and therefore leading to a situation where there's instability in the financial system, because we now have a few names holding too much of concentrated risk.
I understand that. I have a question, two of them actually. One is related to DEI and ESG. How do those factors play in when you're talking about the mitigation of risk in your Longitude Exchange? Do you downgrade or upgrade companies based on these factors?
Sorry, could you repeat again the factors you were mentioning?
DEI,
DEI.
ESG.
Sure. So less familiar with DEI, but with ESG, I'm assuming you're referring to environmental, social, and governance. Well, it's not something that we play a role in, ourselves as Longitude Exchange, evaluating the ESG prospects. What we're doing, though, I would contend is something that is quite the social component of that, in that we seek to make retirement incomes a more stable and secure system, by reducing the amount of longevity risk that is held by those that are responsible for paying out that pension. They then become more stable and more likely to stay afloat as populations live longer, right? And we're expecting life expectancy to continue rising. So how do those companies that are faced with paying out these pensions to everyone until they die, how do we ensure that they stay solvent? And we think that de-risking that component, the longevity risk, and spreading that around the financial system is providing a really big social good.
So the other question was about governments. You're talking a lot of private pensions and things. I understand that. What happens when governments have solvency issues and inflationary pressures, overspending especially, and can't meet their debts? What happens in your business, do you actually work with governments, or is it mostly just the private sector?
We're focused right now on private sector solutions because that's certainly a market that we know well and can approach. Governments present kind of a different situation in that the way that they have capital is different by means of their
Create
ability
capital.
to create capital. I know that's a
Thin
topic that we
air.
could spend a lot of time talking about. Um, and in a sense, their contract with with those that they're providing that pension to is fundamentally a little bit different than faced with the insurance world, where private investors are putting up capital for equity and debt to finance these and back these liabilities, and so those are the ones that will lose their money, and so they stand they have incentive. They have much more incentive to be prudent in their management of those liabilities, and they're doing so in a very professional way. And we think our solutions are well suited to that market, but at the same time, there's ways for us to adapt and address things in the government, or in the public sector. I think for what we're trying to do is stay focused, improve ourselves out in one market that we know well.
Well, there's a hybrid in the middle of this that I had a question about. Like teachers' unions, they're governmental organizations. These teachers, they work for the government, but the teachers' unions have private funds, private equity funds investing in their pension plans. How can the government have one group that has private money that's compounding wonderfully, but the general population, well, it's already insolvent?
Well, I think probably what you're referring to there is something like any pension plan, really, like whether it's for government employees or teachers union, and for the most part, I would imagine those are funded by the contributions of the employees, who have had withholding or contribute from their paychecks, and so much like it might be if you worked at General Motors or another public company and had a pension that you've paid into and the company or the employer has paid into. It is their money. So then the pension plan takes the money of the of all those who contributed into it and invest that money in an institutional way. Fortunately, I would say those large pensions do have access to high performing investment funds, be they private equity or hedge funds, and have an ability to diversify their investments, in a good way, to be, return seeking and ensure that they as well meet the liabilities. But part of that, part of what we've seen, the shift, is actually a consolidation of the pension sector, and a lot of the smaller funds finding that it's more efficient for them to transfer the liability into the insurance sector, who is already very well equipped to manage that type of liability. Really, annuities are fundamentally an insurance product, so it does make sense, rather than tons of corporates and pension trustees managing these, to transfer a pension liability into the insurance sector, where there's professional risk management and asset management capabilities available.
Well, thank you for that answer. And when you get into a cocktail, people stand around talking, you're the first guy they'd come up to, I'm sure, to find out more details. This stuff is
Yeah,
good.
it can be pretty interesting cocktail conversation. I spend more time at my cocktail parties talking about my life as a digital nomad, which is a journey I've been on for the last 5 years, traveling around and a lot of times pursuing different work opportunities, but otherwise trying to stay where the weather is warm and life is cheap and exciting.
Wonderful. Well, we have a guest lined up to be on the program, the Influencer Podcast, in a couple of weeks. That's a digital nomad. So it's going to be one of my favorite, because I've been a digital nomad of some sort myself. So glad to know your wife is. Maybe we'll interview her one day.
Well, it's a new, it's a really cool new concept that I think has been supercharged after COVID, and a lot of people, having different work opportunities, be they remote, partially remote, and employers, some embracing that concept, which has freed people up to do what so many people cite as their number one, greatest joy, which is to travel, but to actually do so in a way that's harmonious with work and in a sustainable way that you can do for extended periods of time. It's really a cool concept.
I totally agree. What's your greatest failure story that we can learn from, and how did you recover from it in this, the reinsurance game?
Well, actually, a failure story that I had comes from another project that I was engaged in, still am engaged in, a company called UCapture, which is a green tech platform that I launched around 7 years ago, trying to combat climate change. And we were entering into our seed round, trying to raise the first real capital for the company. We've been preparing our pitch decks and materials and everything ready to go to market. About 6 months of work. We happened to launch our seed round on March 9th of 2020. So if you can rewind your mind to that painful period of time when COVID was just exploding onto the world, March 9th was actually the first day that the stock markets really crashed and took a tumble, and continued to do so for a week. So here we are, with great ambitions about the money we're going to be able to raise to go save the planet from climate change, and get completely kneecapped. Not that that's the greatest tragedy of COVID, naturally, but one that dealt us quite a blow, and we bounced back by refining our plans towards smaller ambitions, and interestingly, the COVID experience was a good time for our company. We had a very kind of recession-proof business model, and that was interesting to learn through that experience.
Well, it was pretty poignant to be there at that moment in time and realize you have no control. I was sitting in a swimming pool looking up at the sky in Cancun, Mexico, that same day, watching the planes go out leaving Cancun, and they were saying on the news that's the next to the last day that we're going to be open as an airport. The Cancun place I was staying was going to close. If you don't get out today, you might not get out tomorrow. And we were still sitting in the pool going, I wonder if we'll get out tomorrow. And of course we did. It was the last day.
That's a great story. I feel like we're kindred spirits on that one. I was in Valencia in Spain until kind of the middle of March, and was reading the tweets in real time to try to understand if I'd be able to fly out or not be able to fly out. And when we flew back, there was actually only 9 airports remaining open, and that brought me through Atlanta, Georgia. So it was never more of a blessed time to see the Peachtree State.
That you notice things that people do that cause failure in the longitude exchange type businesses, risk management?
Sure. The failures. Well, within my industry, maybe instead of talking about my field specifically, just some of the things that I learned as a startup entrepreneur, some challenges that I faced. I got into projects, both of which are very technology focused, and I would call them both tech startups. But I don't have a background in tech development and as much of an understanding of that. And so launching into things where you don't have domain expertise or don't have all of the skills that you need, is a challenge that I've had to face and continue to face every day. It's one that I enjoy, but certainly something to be mindful of is to focus on what you know and what you're really good at, and that's probably where you're going to be able to add most value.
Absolutely. Stick to the knitting, said Tom Peters in what was it? In Search of Excellence, or one of those books I read back in the 80s.
Right.
Stick to what you know. So what do you get?
And I know you asked for a few. One of the other ones that I was was thinking of when you asked that question is that in the early days of my companies, I certainly chased a lot of opportunities. You'd see, someone would mention this idea and you'd run at that idea for a while, and then you'd hear this idea and you'd run at that for a while, and you could spread yourself a little bit too thin and get distracted from from the main mission that you wanted to accomplish. So, kind of remembering that, or being able to, put the blinders on sometimes. Something that, I can't say I'm perfect at, but I try to do more and more.
I know that one too. Chasing those silver, starry things, shiny objects, they call them.
Exactly.
So what about motivates you to keep going and do these things, Avery? I think maybe your wife's hobby turned vocation may be part of it. You like to travel?
Yeah, not sure who you're referring to, a wife. I'm not married. But yeah, sorry. Anyway, the things that I'm working on right now, I think, are actually two of the biggest problems facing humanity, and that motivates me, very much. It is a driving principle. When I say that, those two things are climate change, the environment, and longevity risk. Now, the thing that ties those two things together, they seem on the surface to be quite disparate, but they're both very slow moving ships that we can ignore, or as society, on a day-to-day basis. Right now, there are things obviously with climate change that pop up and remind us. You got your wildfires and hurricanes and those things. That's becoming a more day-to-day risk and present. But they're slow moving things that have happened over generations, decades, and will also take generations and decades to solve. And so on any one day, it can be, easy to tune these things out. But I'm motivated to work on these long-term systems towards solving these really big problems, and that's what motivates me day to day and keeps me going. We certainly haven't gotten there.
Gotcha. What would be your company motto at Longitude Exchange? Any particular motto?
Uh, sure. Better better pricing, faster execution, more transactions. Right? We're trying to increase the volume and efficiency in this market, because there's a lot of pent up demand for this, and we think, in the longevity risk, we're transitioning from regimes, from one in which pension funds were managing these liabilities, towards one in which insurance and reinsurance sector, and as well a broader base of capital markets investors, can participate in supporting the retirement obligations on a long-term basis.
So give me a sense of who would be your client base, who would buy from you, what groups?
Yeah, our clients are really insurance companies and reinsurance companies who are presently managing these liabilities, as well as pension funds, right? So it is the companies who have pension and annuity obligations, and have that longevity risk. They come to Longitude Exchange and are able to develop a longevity risk hedging program. They actually load their liabilities into our platform and analyze those risks and come up with different hedging solutions that they can analyze the financial metrics of, and then place those transactions in our marketplace, where a very broad base of investors are able to participate in taking on that risk. So the platform, the technology, is providing the efficiency and to that process. And by being a digital marketplace, we're inviting and making it easy for a much broader base of market participants.
Are y'all basically connectors then? Like you have the platform that brings the two parties together?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're the eBay of longevity risk, right? Where people can come and sell their longevity risk and have on the other side of it, willing participants looking to take on that risk and get paid a premium to do so.
No, that's good. That's a good analogy. The eBay of longevity risk. I think that resonates so well. People understand exactly what you do. How do you find your
Well,
ideal client?
yeah, the markets that I work in, there's actually not an infinite number of companies, right? So we're able to focus on a few key countries where longevity risk activity is quite high. That's the United Kingdom, United States, Canada, the Netherlands, a few other places in Europe, where we've been active. Although our technology would work anywhere in the world, again, to that concept of trying to, focus on a few key markets first and prove ourselves out. Those are where we're working. And so it's the insurance companies and reinsurance companies who are active in those markets, some of the largest pension funds, as well as their consultants and other third parties that are, in and around this space that can be market participants in some way through Longitude Exchange.
You mentioned UK, and I immediately think of Lloyd's of London. Is that one of the people you might use as one of your connecting points?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned them because that's kind of a precursor to concepts like Longitude Exchange. That's a physical, much like the New York Stock Exchange, where you see people standing around and buy, sell. Lloyd's of London, starting as an insurance exchange like that, and what Longitude Exchange is a digital marketplace for that. Given that it's 2023 and there's a lot of efficiency and power that you can bring by building things as digital platforms. That's what we've focused to try to innovate on, on some of the principles developed hundreds of years ago in Lloyd's of London.
Is there any competition for this product line? And are you the main one, only one?
Well, yeah, there's with everything competition, and there's a couple of other digital platforms that seek to be active in this space. Where I think Longitude Exchange differentiates is we're very focused on life risks, on longevity and mortality risk, and that's enabled us to build a toolkit that is really well purposed to evaluating these types of transactions and those risks specifically. So I think some of our competition, it isn't so much competition because they're focusing on other markets in the insurance space. And we think we've carved out a niche that is exactly our expertise. It's where I've spent a lot of time personally, and the other parts of my team, have as well. So while there is certainly competition in a sense, we do feel that we've got our expertise and domain, some leadership in there.
Yeah. What's an idea of the size of this market out there that's untapped?
Well, there's just absolutely so many zeros on these transactions when you talk about pension, and annuity things, pension funds themselves being oftentimes $1 billion plus things in the world right now. We would quantify that there might be somewhere around 80 to 100 trillion dollars of longevity linked liabilities, right? So that's totaling up, Social Security in the United States and the pension plans in the OECD world and state and local government pensions, all these things that we've been talking about. That's a massive amount of retirement liabilities, that are pooled up waiting to get paid out. And if the population continues living longer than expected, instead of being 100 trillion, that could end up being 120 trillion, right? That's the longevity risk that we're talking about. When we say longevity risk, that's 100, what we expected to be 100 trillion, turning out to be 120 trillion. where is that extra 20 trillion of capital going to come from, or how do we ensure that the people that are on the hook for paying those liabilities are able to do so? So we're seeing, an enormous amount of that risk transferring into different holders and being backed by different companies and entities. And so an enormous amount is already on the move, but it's probably only 10% at most has moved there thus far. So we've got a long way to go.
Got a really interesting question for you now. There may be some people have an idea that there's a nefarious move about to depopulate the world. Okay, how does the events like the pandemic for COVID impact your studies, your longitudinal actuarial tables? I mean, there's definitely been a lot of people saying that this was not an accident, that it was a caused event. So tell me about what your thoughts are on the effect of the pandemic on your business.
Yeah, well, working in life risk, COVID has certainly presented us a very interesting case study and a lot of different data points to think about and digest. Naturally, when we think about mortality risk, extreme mortality risk, witnessing an event like COVID, brings into focus that this type of thing can happen. There can be shocks to mortality, and those can happen, rapidly and in a global context. Now, we did already have, that evidence actually back in the Spanish flu, around 100 years ago exactly. We saw a global pandemic, but if you just looked at the mortality data set for the last 50 years before COVID, you would think, well, there's kind of a straight line of mortality improvement. People are living longer, and nothing can change that. And now you witness something like COVID happening, and you realize actually there always was the possibility of this happening, however remote we thought it was. And I think every time you witness an event like that, you have to probably increase what you would have felt the probability of those things occurring is. So on the mortality risk side of the equation, certainly you might perceive there is more mortality risk in the world. On the longevity side, the other side, it becomes a bit of a one-off, gain in that perhaps more people, died in those years. But one of the interesting concepts there that we saw is that, perhaps there was a higher mortality in people that were maybe closer to death already, and so that might have shortened life expectancies for that population by a few years, but perhaps not shortening life expectancy for the mass of the population all that much. And now you could think that, well, we as society have prepared in certain ways for these types of events even better, and so any elements of preparedness might make you think that we're now going to be able to live longer, right? So advances in medicine and pandemic preparedness and reaction plans, all those things impacted. So I guess in summary, it is to say the jury's still out, right? We'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm in medicine. I understand what's going on a lot. And I understand there's different opinions about whether it was a planned event or whether it was well conceived or covered up. These things will matter. And I wonder if the actuaries, do you employ actuaries in your team, and do they take into account natural events versus planned caused events as they create their actuarial tables?
Yeah, we as Longitude Exchange don't employ actuaries, but we do speak with a lot of actuaries and risk modeling consultants who spend a lot of time thinking about these problems. And regardless of the causes, these sort of things, all types of elements of risk, need to be thought about and factored in. I'm sure both man-made and naturally occurring disasters are parts of those models. So there's probably an increasing concern and fear because technology is presenting us with greater capabilities, greater capabilities than ever to wreak havoc, perhaps on society and on the world. And so, yeah, certainly something that needs to be accounted for in models, not just life models. Any other types of models for P&C risks and all of these. There's a lot of change.
Oh, we could go so deep into, AI robots coming, taking over. We could go all the way from one place to the other, but let's jump into some specifics. What kind of well-defined product and service does your company offer to your client?
Well, we provide a technology platform where they can structure, analyze, and place longevity and mortality risk hedges that are well suited to their financial and risk management needs. It's a bit of a mouthful, but all that is to say, we help our clients manage their risk.
Do you have a particular set of things that would be a 5-star client experience, how you meet their needs so well that they feel well taken care of?
Yeah, 5 stars. Well, let's see. I think what we're really focused on right now is working with some of the first clients using our platform to explain to them how it works and really what those benefits are. I think anytime you're introducing a new concept, you'll need to be a bit hands-on in that process and receptive to the feedback of those clients. So we're still in that phase where we've now taken our product and our service to market. We're having the conversations with prospective users of that and taking on board their feedback to make sure the solution really does overcome their challenges, meets their needs. And so that's a fun process where, previously held assumptions and things you thought that you knew about the market, sometimes get turned on their head.
Well, I think probably the people that you're meeting face to face and you're giving them solutions that they need. So like I say, an untapped market and a big need. So I think it sounds like you're going to do very well. I think that's one of the more unique businesses that I've heard about as far as interviewing people on the Influencers podcast. Let's jump into some things about you. How do you get your day started? What are you grateful for today?
Well, I think I forget who it was who joked, but there's only 2 types of people in the world: those who check their phone from bed when they wake up, and those who check it when they're on their toilet. I'm one of those that checks it while I'm still in bed because I like the warm and cozy thing. So I guess that's how I get my day started. But jokes aside, the reason that I do that is because I do have my fingers in a number of pies from Longitude Exchange and UCapture, 2 of my companies. Friends all over the world. From my travels as a digital nomad, there's hardly a minute goes by that there's not some new notification here, and so I wake up and try to clear some of those things out from the peace and quiet of bed.
So you indicated you were the digital nomad. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. I left my job in investment banking in 2016 in New York and was already working on my projects as a startup founder, and so just determined that I did have the freedom to be able to travel and certainly a desire to. And there's pretty much everywhere else in the world is less expensive than New York City, so it made a lot of sense for quite a few reasons to kind of just pack my bags and see where things would take me.
Excellent. Well, I just didn't hear you correctly the first time, so apologize. I was thinking, you said your wife was a digital nomad, and I go, well, how do you move with her? But now I understand.
That'd be an interesting challenge.
Give me a sense of what you would give yourself advice if you were talking to yourself as a 20-year-old.
Well, back to that challenge that I faced as a startup founder and not having enough background in technology and tech development. I think 20 years ago would have been a fantastic time to start learning that, and I would have been equipped with these awesome tools. Now, I wouldn't say that that's exactly advice to somebody today, to go to learn that, because tech development and coding is has changed a lot, and now, as you mentioned, generative AI and these types of things, it's changing ever more rapidly. But certainly over the last 20 years, had I been armed with those skills, I might have been more dangerous in certain contexts.
So we had a little blink in the internet service, so I missed your last half of your comment. But yeah, I think it's really cool that you can look back and say, I wish I had done it this way, but I'm glad I didn't. Now that I'm here, everything is working well.
Yeah, I think what I focus on with a lot of things is just being happy with where I am, and what I'm at. I mean, there's always the woulda, coulda, shoulda sort of stuff, but I'm healthy, and I've got great friends and great opportunities ahead of me, and so it's very easy to get caught up in what you don't have, or the things that you wish you had done. But just being happy with where I'm at is something that I find I'm able to do more and more right now.
Yeah, you mentioned you're very interested in societal issues. Why is being impactful important to you, Avery?
Well, I think that people that have abilities and smarts should apply those in the best way for humanity and for society. I'm altruistic in that sense, or would like to think of myself as such. I while the projects that I set out working on certainly have a capitalist and profit motive, or ability, that's because I think that market-based solutions are often the best ways to addressing our problems. People respond and react to incentives, and incentives are often well played in market situations, right? So by focusing on these market-based solutions to climate change and to longevity risk, um, that's what I've been doing in my in my corporate pursuits, and so I think it's motivating to work on those things, and that other smart people should do so, whether or not it's about making money or not. Applying your smarts for good.
Thank you for that. From Wharton School of Business to New York City investment banking to Cape Town, South Africa, as a digital nomad, that's quite a trip. It's not finished yet. What do you want to be remembered for when it's all said and done?
I hope that I've succeeded in some of these missions, or at least partially succeeded on those projects, and that it's enabled me to actually then be generous to those around me. There's kind of nothing brings me greater joy than um, sharing with friends, and being able to support and provide for others in certain ways. And so that's something that I hope to achieve. I don't currently have family, and so I hope that I'm able to leave a lasting legacy on a really broad set of people who recognize some accomplishment and actually having impact.
Excellent. Well, we all want to leave an impact, and that's a good goal. What about us? How can we support you? What's your link to get in touch and all that?
Well, easy enough. If you're interested in getting active on solving climate change, or just playing your own small part, take a look at UCapture. That's www.ucapture.com. It's a free and easy way to go carbon neutral and play your part in combating climate change.
Very good. And what about your experience on the show today? Getting up early was what I did. You had to stay up late. So how was your
Well, no,
experience?
not stay up late. We're just around just after 5 p.m. Here, and like great Jimmy Buffett said, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and that's here in Cape Town, South Africa. So probably after I finish up this call, I might head on down to Margaritaville.
Hey, I can't believe that. 5 o'clock everywhere, somewhere. I like it. What's your final word? I want to let you have a moment to speak to the group.
Well, I just want to say thanks so much for having me on the show, Dr. Bill. Fantastic to get to speak to an audience of folks interested in influencers. And if any of the topics that I mentioned interest you, please do reach out to me. You can find me at avery@ucapture.com. That's my email address. Love to hear from you. Look me up on LinkedIn. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone in the United States, and happy holidays thereafter.
Yeah, turkey for all. Hey, how can I help you? Well, I can probably look at the thing here that would be, let's see if I can put it up here. There you go. Freedom is a QR code. If you click on the QR code, if you're listening and part of the audience today and want to know what the heck is Influencer Podcast about?
But that's you capture if you're trying to, or what's capture freedom? Is that your slogan?
Yeah, this is my QR code up above.
Sorry for interrupting you. I thought you were putting my company in there.
Oh yeah, sorry I didn't do the transition well. The digital business card for those who want to reach me as ovu.me/ONPASSIVE. And what you'll find on my business card is basically at that website, drbillwilliams.tv, has all my podcasts. Avery's will be up there later on this week. And you can find the books I've written. I have 2 international bestsellers. I would say that there's also information that is related to podcast and digital products that are AI infused. This one might interest you, Avery. You're a digital nomad, and this particular platform, OConnect, will allow you to speak to people in your language. They can hear them. You're talking in their language. So it's a video conferencing platform that is taking the world by storm right now. And things that we're doing are revolutionary in that space. High value, high technology. And just want to make that available to you guys. If you're looking, you can get a free download, a free copy of the dang old phone rang in my ear just now. Sorry. So I would say for digital nomads, this would be a must-have.
Yeah, it sounds like fantastic. Cool.
What you'll be able to do with this will be quite phenomenal. So as you travel around the world, feel free to use this and share it with your friends. Hey, this is Dr. Bill Williams on the Influencer Podcast, and I really enjoyed having Avery with us today. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate all the information you shared. It's novel. We didn't know much about it. Now we do.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Take care, guys. We'll have another episode of the Influencers Podcast coming up real soon, so stay tuned. Take care, everyone.